think is Philly's biggest challenge this season?
They lost both coordinators. They also lost both starting safeties and Javon Hargrave up front. So
the Eagles won the draft, in my opinion.
Number one guy in the draft, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. Keely Ringo got good value on him.
This team really is set up the best.
D'Andre Swift from the Philadelphia Eagles. You put Swift with that offensive line, he's quick, he's explosive, he'll run you over, he'll run around you, and he has speed. All the chips, let's go.
You know, you guys, I mean, unless you're new here, it really doesn't seem like much of a secret at this point that the Philadelphia Eagles are heading into this 2023 season with really one of the more interesting situations in all of football. Because again, with some of their key departures, both through the coaching staff and player personnel, them having statistically the toughest schedule out of all 32 teams this year, and even some going as far to judge what we've seen from them in the preseason so far with Marcus Mariota running the offense. No disrespect intended to you, Marcus, but still, it seems that at this point in the 2023 preseason, a lot of people out there are almost ignoring some of the biggest hints that Philly has given us in terms of what they're actually going to be doing come September. And what that ends up being might just surprise some of you. But if you guys are looking for more NFL content just like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on those notifications to never miss another video as we inch closer and closer to the beginning of the 2023 season. Okay, so to get back on topic with the Philadelphia Eagles, this is a team that, again, while the preseason isn't necessarily going to testify to this, that was easily one of, if not the most versatile and dynamic offenses in the entire NFL last season. And while if the MVP caliber play and ridiculous dual threat ability of their quarterback last season wasn't enough to impress you with their air attack presence, which may I remind you, some people out there still think that he is the definition of overrated. There is of course also the triple threat in the wide receiver room of guys like AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, who did more than their fair share of contributing to this aspect of the offense. And even up to this point, with everything that we've heard out of training camp and preseason, all signs are pointing to the idea that these three are somehow going to have an even bigger impact alongside Jalen Hurts in 2023. And sure, while watching Philly's pass game throughout the majority of the preseason so far has been, I guess you could say, eventful, with most of the second and third stringers getting pretty much all of the reps, and even showing that Philly could be deeper in this regard if the production does carry over from specific players, the passing game isn't necessarily what most Philly fans are keeping an eye on right now. Because instead, I mean, most of their attention is clearly on this completely revamped running back room. And of course, while most of us know of the moves at this point, and obviously how phenomenal they look, at least on paper, there's still the question of how it's actually going to look on the football field. Now again, preseason, unfortunately for all of us, is not necessarily the time we're going to see a high demand of looks from Philly's new backfield tandem in D'Andre Swift and Rashaad Penny. And yes, even though we have seen a handful from both of them up to this point, and honestly, they did so on some pretty high efficiencies as well, these numbers, I mean, you guys know as well as I do, they're not doing a damn thing for anybody. So instead of focusing on who's been running the ball for Philly this preseason, let's look into how they actually anticipate to use this aspect of their offense. And if you're new to this team, believe me, it's a tried and true version of Philly football, which of course is running back by committee. But this year is going to be a lot different from the past. Now last season, even though it was widely referred to as a committee backfield between the three-headed monster of Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, and Kenneth Gainwell, I mean, the numbers will show you themselves it wasn't much of a committee as people said it was, and if it was, Miles Sanders practically ran it himself. But with the money that Howie Roseman ended up saving by not re-signing Miles Sanders, and essentially getting a 2-for-1 special in the process, the absurd skill set combination of Swift and Penny at Jalen Hurts' disposal is literally to a degree that he has never had before. To start with D'Andre Swift, again, while we've only seen glimpses here and there so far of him doing it in an Eagle uniform, I mean, the film does more than enough to show you that when he is healthy, he's referred to as one of the most elusive running backs in the game today. And even to make matters better in terms of his ground game production, he averaged far and above the most yards per carry compared to any Eagles running back on the roster in 2022. And this is just the cherry on top because he was doing all of that behind the 5th best best offensive line in the league in Detroit. So I want you to just try to imagine what he's going to be capable of behind the best offensive line in the league in Philadelphia. Yeah, that's kind of terrifying. Then even when you want to shift the conversation over to Rashaad Penny, who is someone that you can clearly see from his time in Seattle, he really somewhat seems to be a sweet spot in the middle for running backs, in the sense that he can definitely both create in the open field when he has the opportunity, but he's also more of a power back presence in the sense that he can be used in short yardage situations more than Philly's had over the last couple of years. So when you're looking at how these two have been specifically used in their short time in the preseason so far, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. But then, while I do also know that a lot of people like to bring up both the injury history and availability concerns between both Penny and Swift in the past, but again, the fact that they have proven pieces in Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell just sitting in the background this season, waiting to shine whenever they are needed, just makes everything about this running back room that much more reassuring. But let me just say this, there's going to be a lot more affected than just the ground game because of these guys. Because, well, again, while Philadelphia definitely had one of, if not the best offenses in the entire league last season, it also severely lacked in the element of running back target share. And if you were curious why, as Nick Sirianni and new offensive coordinator Brian Johnson have stated in the past, it's not that they didn't want to get their running backs involved in this regard, but it was more so the fact that they just didn't think it would be their strong suit. But with D'Andre Swift in the backfield now, that very quickly becomes a different story. And while some of his film and numbers from just last season in Detroit would be more than enough to convince you that he's one of the best pass catching backs that you could add to an offense, there's also the fact that their new offensive coordinator in Brian Johnson, someone who had a ton of involvement in the development of Jalen Hurts within this team, is someone who is very well known to heavily involve the backfield in all situations of his offense in the past. And when you're talking about adding an element of this degree to an already proven offense, all I can really say is the sky is literally the limit. But aside from all of the teasers that the offense has showed us, I mean, what about the defense? Because at least from my point of view, we've been seeing some phenomenal play from their rookie class and guys like Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the box, or even Sidney Brown and Keely Ringo in the secondary, or even continued improvement from the rest of their young core if you want to touch on guys like Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, etc. Obviously, time is only going to tell with this, but as of right now, it seems that the expectations in Philly are that they're going to be able to retain their top 10 defensive presence. But that, along with everything else discussed here in this video, is where I want to hear what you guys have to think. So be sure to let me know in the comments, what are your bold expectations for either the offensive or the defensive presence of the Philadelphia Eagles this season? And if you had to, predict what their record will be come playoff time. But also, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate y'all more than anything, and I'll see you in the next one.